Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Grassroots Racer. This episode is brought to you by Australasian Sim Racing League, where I'm currently competing in the development series. If you're interested in watching or competing in any of their online leagues, check them out on Facebook and YouTube, where you can watch some of their sim racing with full commentary and heaps of fun. I really enjoy racing with these guys. It's always great fun. Now on to tonight's guest, who has raced in Formula Ford and is currently competing in Australian Formula 3 series with Gilmour Racing Team. So to find out more, welcome Noah Sands. How are you tonight, Noah?
Good, how are you, Ayrton? Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, it's great to have all different sorts of people on the show. When did you start karting?
I started karting in 2012, and it was just sort of club level, and then from there progressed to what they call a Southern Zone series, which is surrounding areas in New South Wales, and then progressed to state series, and then national series, and then here we are today.
What category did you first start in? What was the class?
So I started in, it was cadets then, which was with a Gilmour engine. And then I went to rookies, which was a J engine. And then this is probably a bit before your time. And then I went to cadet 12, which was when that got introduced. And then I went KA4 and then KA4 heavy and then junior max and then KA2. And then that was my karting career.
What was your best karting memory?
Probably in my last year of karting in 2019 when we won one of the rounds of AKC at Newcastle and KA2. That was pretty cool.
And after karting, what category did you move into next?
So after karting, I did the first half of 2019 in go-karts. And then after that, the second half, we'd moved into Formula Ford. And we used that half of the year just for testing in preparation for 2020. Then we didn't get anything really in 2020. I only got two New South Wales State Formula Ford races, which I managed to win one of them, which was pretty cool. And then I did 2021 Australian Championships in Formula Ford. And we managed to come runner-up in that series to Tom Sargent. And I was driving the car that Lachlan Maneve previously drove. So I stepped in sort of when he was moving into sort of when he stopped racing Formula Ford, I jumped into that seat when he was sort of in his area of 86 slash trying to put a deal together for TCR. So, yeah.
I've previously had Lockie on here before. He was a great chat. One thing I remember most was we actually did talk about his Formula Ford career. Was there something special about the car? Was it really quick?
Yeah, the car was pretty quick, and Lachlan will tell you the same. It was very well prepared by the guys at CHU Racing. They had a lot of data. They had 6 or 7 years of data before I came into the team, so they basically knew their setups, just bolted it in, and if you could drive half all right, or if you were a good driver, the car was always going to be quick. So it was just up to you to focus on what you're doing, and the car was always going to be there.
I know for some people it's a bit hard to transition from karts to driving a manual gearbox. How did you go in Formula Ford for the first time?
I've found that a lot of people have issues with the changing gears because you can change without the clutch. You just have to lift off the throttle, and it's probably similar in Formula V. I'm not sure what they do in Formula V, but in Formula Ford, basically you just preload the stick, lift off the throttle, and it'll go in. Where it's also a strength thing, so you could have enough strength to push it in. And I didn't seem to have any issues. A lot of people tend to destroy what they call dog rings in the gearbox. And I never was hard on the dog rings or hard on the gears because I sort of had it down pat. And with the Formula Ford gearbox, it's sort of not like your typical manual gearbox where on the gear stick it has 1, 2, 3, 4, and you can sort of locate it. you sort of just have to locate it by feel.
Yeah, I definitely noticed the same thing with my Formula V. Like I know for first and second was a bit of a guess, but because in the Formula V you don't need to use first and second unless you're taking off or slowing down for pit lane, so that's all right. And then for third and fourth, you just push it up against the rail. Um,
Yeah, yeah. Well,
that's
that's the same in Formula Ford. Typically you only use first to get off the line, and then most tracks you only use second for like hairpin corners. At Phillip Island, you only use it for Honda, I believe, and then the rest is third and fourth at high speed tracks like that.
um. So do you remember your first time at Phillip Island? Because I know for lots of people it's very different. Like for me especially, I remember how amazing it was.
I do. It was first time I tested there in 2019. Me and Tom Sargent, we tested there in preparation for 2020. And I remember coming onto the straight, he was probably 8 car lengths behind me, and he's just flew past me. And I thought, surely his engine's, way better. But then it turns out that's Phillip Island. On the last lap, you can be leading, especially in Formula Ford, last lap, you can be leading, and then you can get to Honda or MG and you'll be in fifth or sixth. So you've got to learn how to, Phillip Island's an amazing track, but you've got to learn how to use the draft to your advantage. And Formula Ford, everyone's so close, so you've got to sort of have that in your pocket, in your back pocket to try and make a gain from everyone else.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's the same with Formula V. Um, there was a lot of like, because a lot of drivers they'll be leading on to like the last lap, and then they'll end up near the end of the top five, and they'll be like, "Well, what happened?" So it does happen a lot at
Yeah,
Phillip Island. Um,
yeah.
but when did you transition into F3?
So this is my first year in F3, so I only transitioned. My first test day was in January. So my last race in a Formula Ford was the last national round at Phillip Island, which was October or November. And then had a break, and then I jumped into an F3 in middle of January, early January.
What's your what would you say is your favorite thing about the Formula 3 car?
The mid corner speed / corner speed you can carry is just crazy. Like turn one at Eastern Creek, flat, easily flat. Turn one at QR. I don't know if you've ever been to QR, but on new tyres, it's nearly flat. Turn two is just a lift at QR. Just the downforce is incredible. You can go into every corner pretty much. You're braking at the 50-meter mark, 40-meter mark, pushing it. Um, just crazy. Like I don't know if you saw at Eastern Creek in the last race, I actually went around the outside of someone because we have so much grip in these cars, and you can basically you can be off the racing line, and if you've got enough speed, the aero will just carry you so fast. So that was the biggest thing, because Formula Ford, like you don't really have much grip. Probably
Mm-hmm.
same with Formula V. You just sort of slide around, and got to learn to control the car. But with Formula 3, you got to be so smooth and so precise and get the maximum out of the braking and get the maximum out of the downforce, because you can be a second off, and that can just be because you're not flowing through the corner enough. So that's the biggest thing I learned was the aero. Yeah.
I'm guessing it'd be a lot different compared to, like having a wing and not having a wing. What sort of speeds though would you get in the Formula 3?
Well, I know at Sydney through turn one, we were doing 245, 250, which it may not sound that fast because um, where you've also got to realize with the downforce, it's resistance. So at some tracks, other categories might be a little bit faster, but on lap time, we're faster just because of the mid corner speed we can carry.
One thing I noticed with the Formula V, it's a lot of momentum. It's a real momentum thing. Where do you guys race the Formula 3s around Australia?
So this year, our calendar is we've had round one at Eastern Creek. The next round's at the Bend. Then it's Winton, I believe. Then another round at Sydney. then um, oh, then possibly Phillip Island, and then possibly, and then one. There's still one round that's to be confirmed.
I've heard the Bend is a pretty good track. Have you been there yourself?
No, I haven't been there. So um, I would have been there last year in Formula Ford, but that round didn't go through because last year was still sort of COVID affected. Um, but no, I haven't been to the Bend before, but I've heard that especially in Formula Three, um, it's very very fast, and you've got to learn how to use the aero.
Did you say that you had a favorite track, or you don't?
Um, there's old Phillip Island's good. I like Eastern Creek in an F3. Um, where else? Wakefield's actually pretty good. It was a pretty good track for me in Formula Ford. Um, if I had a favourite track, it would probably be Phillip Island or Eastern Creek.
Yeah, I haven't been to Eastern Creek yet, but I'm sure that it would be a very nice track to race on, considering what I've seen on the TV. And
Yeah,
Phillip Island is a great track, but it is very difficult to get right. I
yeah,
imagine Eastern Creek is very the same.
yeah. Eastern Creek is very technical. If you don't, mostly just because the surfaces. You've probably heard on when the supercars broadcast the commentators, they say, I think Scaife on the weekend was saying Garth Tander was saying there's like 3 or 4 different surfaces. So getting the car set up. Yeah, so at Eastern Creek, it's very technical, and the surfaces on the surfaces is very different. Like, for example, coming out of turn 5, if you look at someone's onboard turn 5, before you sort of go up over corporate, that's all surfaces is different. So making sure you get the most out of the tire over those surfaces, because some of the surfaces are really abrasive and then some of them are really, really smooth. So making sure you have the pressures correct for especially if it's a warm day, you could hit those abrasive surfaces and the pressures could, increase before your lap's even done. So
Mm. I know in the Formula Fords, the curbs can be very deadly. How do they can you handle them well in the Formula 3, or do they have to be flat curbs?
we usually don't really run them because the cars are so low to the ground. And like some curbs we hit, it'll rip the front wing off. So Eastern Creek, we don't really use any curbs. And if we use a curb, it'll be an exit curb, like over corporate or something like that. But for example, some curbs that are very high, so if we clip them with the front wing, it can rip the front wing off. So we have to be careful, pick and choose what curbs we use. But in Formula Ford, very similar because the cars are so low to the ground, and it'll be similar in Formula V because I think in Formula 3 our minimum floor from the floor to the ground, I think the minimum height is 40 millimeters. So if you look at that, that's not that much. So if you get a sawtooth curb or something, you can damage the floor, rip the front wing off, or do any sorts of damage. And as you know, carbon fiber wings can be quite expensive, and the floor is one piece. So if you damage one corner, you have to then pull the whole floor off and replace the whole floor. So yeah, you've got to be careful with car placement. And because you're so low in the seat, you've got to also learn to judge where your car is compared to a Formula Ford, because you can't really see. Well, that's the thing I noticed when I jump into Formula 3. You can't see the front. You can't see in front of you, directly in front of you the road. You sort of have to look across the front of the car,
Mm.
and you sort of have to use your from what you've learned in other categories with car placement. So yeah.
Yeah, what I noticed with the Formula V is because the first time I went out there, I actually missed a lot of apexes because in the karts, you can basically see down your NASA panel. Um,
Yeah.
so one thing I learnt was you gotta point the car where you want it to go before you actually get there, because it's when you get there, you're not going to be able to see where you are. So
Yeah.
it's very difficult for open wheelers. But it's definitely a new experience for me. And lastly, for the viewers out there who don't know, what engine is in the Formula 3?
So it's I better get this right, 2 liter inline four Mercedes Benz. So previously in Formula 3, some of them had Toyotas or Spies or Honda, but now the most common engine everyone runs is Mercedes Benz, and they come from HWAG in Germany. I'm not sure if you've heard of the Formula 3 team. That's the
Yeah.
team that Jack Doohan raced for, HWA. So they do all the engines. They control the engines for the category. So there's no no mystery on who's doing what with engines. They try to control it as most as possible. So yeah.
Do you have any sponsors that you'd like to thank?
Yeah, all these guys in the background, as you can see, we've got GFX Traders, KSK Lubricants, Main Glass, Window and Door Repairs, and the PPF Studio. So thanks for all they do. And a few of them actually came to round one at Sydney, which was good. So they witnessed us getting a good result. So it was good for them. And yeah, they're happy to support me in Formula 3 this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for your time, Noah. It's been great speaking to you tonight, and I really do appreciate you coming on the show and having a bit of a chat and telling the viewers a bit about what you do.
Thanks for having me, Ayrton. It's been great.
Cool. And just remember, everyone, if you're racing on the track this weekend, make sure you drive fast and take chances.